They're the ones who are supposed to be the guardian of the law. Come into these courts, you get your writ struck out. I said to the Supreme Court judge in Western Australia, who was the constitutional barrister for Western Australia before he became a judge, he actually asked me, what is the offence of treason? I said, Your Honour, aren't we switching roles here? He said, Mr. Shaw, you sort of have to explain it to me because it's not the usual offence that comes across the bench on a weekly basis. Now, here's where you have to get reasonable at law. Reasonable at law is, you've got to quote a case that they'll respect. And I said in R versus Casement 1917 King's Bench, now we still have a UK Act, that's our Commonwealth Parliament, the Commonwealth Constitution Act. Therefore King's Bench is precedent law in that while you still have it. They're about to take it off you. They've actually put you up a tunnel where you can't go left or right. I'll show you what they've done. But I said in R versus Casement 1917 King's Bench, they ruled treason is breach of allegiance. Now I'll tell you what West Australia has done. They created an act in the year 2003-2004. There's a couple of copies there. It's called the Acts Amendment and Repeal Courts and Legal. Well, could you stop right there? Because when you touch the Crown, you're touching our agreement with the Crown. Now you're working outside of the authority of your jurisprudence. You with me? So this amends 80 odd acts in Western Australia. But coming to the Supreme Court Act, because the judge said to me, Mr. Shaw, why are you referring to me as the offender? I said, Your Honour, with respect, this Act changes the Supreme Court Act. Well, so what? I said, but Your Honour, if I read your section, it says here, section 130 of this Acts Amendment Repeal Court. The Supreme Court Act is amended. Now remember what we just had a conversation on, where he asked me what the offence of treason is. I said, breach of allegiance. I want to ask you, if I read a portion of this, and I won't read the whole lot, but in the Supreme Court Act in Western Australia, the amendment is this. The second schedule is amended by deleting our Sovereign Lady Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors, and inserting instead the state of Western Australia. Oops. Now, Your Honour, is that a breach of allegiance? But how can the offender hear their own matter? That's what I'm referring to as the offender, Your Honour, with respect. I eventually got in front of 3 judges of the full court of the Supreme Court in Western Australia. And the opponent was the Attorney General of Western Australia, Jimmy McGinty, and the Director of Public Prosecutions, Commonwealth, Damien Bugg. Now, when somebody takes on a farmer, you'd think the Attorney General would be enough clout. They pulled in the Director of Public Prosecutions to co-join in the writ. Why? The point I'm making. Now, Joe Bialke-Peterson, if you go to the trouble of getting some of what you call the Hansard's extracts, and most people don't know how to do that, I think December 7, 1977, Queensland Hansard, is where Joe said, we are strengthening Section 53 to block a Labor Party government's intention to bring a socialist republic by stealth to the people. What a hell of a statement. And in 1978, the year later, Sir Charles Court in Western Australia strengthened Section 73 and said the same thing. Now, the point I'm asking is, did West Australia remove the Crown? Because when you look at this Act, I've only read the portion. There's 8 pages in just what you call Part 8.
They tried.
Well, they've done it. But the royal assent issues. But to do the Australia Act, you had to do the State Request Acts. Are you aware of that? What's the State Request Acts? That's where the Queensland Parliament, on your behalf, asked the UK if we could change the law a bit. Are you aware that they did that? Well, under that State Request Act, were they bound to Section 53 to give it to you? Because if you read it properly, it actually says any legislation created in contravention of this is invalid in law. Isn't that a good start? Because suddenly you've got the judges, every judge, caught by the infraction of Western Australia. Because I'll tell you what the law is. Well, let me ask you a question. Have I just revealed an offence of treason has occurred in the country? The law is this. The Criminal Code Act 1995 Commonwealth, Section 80, is the section on treason. Anybody read it? Yeah. Well, you read it after tonight. Any person who conceals treason, same section, life imprisonment. Please don't go there. Don't even talk about it in such a manner that it has what you call special leave to appeal is refused. It's done on the papers. The average person won't get in the door. But what I did was send up 6 volumes of an affidavit that showed 16 defendants, one of which was the Governor-General charged for criminal charges down in Victoria, which in essence meant that the High Court judges were protecting their boss. So the moment they refused it, I went back into the Melbourne Magistrates Court and charged the 2 High Court judges who did that, which was Kirby and Callanan. And then I had to serve them in Canberra. And that was the beginning of saying to the High Court, your little fraud has ceased. So there are now 54 defendants in that stack. And it's growing. But I want to tell you something here. This is an act out of Victoria. Now remember, we're saying that we're the only state with grand jury because you can't do this without grand jury. How does grand jury work? That's when you finally get the right to go in front of a grand jury. Grand jury is 23 people chosen from the electoral roll just to hear the offence to see if it's an indictment. Isn't that simple? Because you're already saying, God, you've got it, you've got it already, ain't you? All I have to do is prove, did somebody breach the allegiance? And as a grand jury, you will give me an indictment.